The Little Green Flag. It was New Year's Eve. The air was warm and dry when Yi Ling drove to the house of the alumna that she had talked to several times on the phone. She left her daughter Xiao Hui in the car and quickly walked toward the little doorbell, which was emitting a faint glow in the dark. She pressed the bell. Someone came to the door. Yi Ling told her what she was coming for. "Please come in. We've been working on the flags the whole day. Now our fingers won't even bend," the alumna said with a smile. "More people are coming to spend the New Year's Eve here so we can all go together early tomorrow morning to the view stand. You're welcome to stay for the potluck dinner." "No thanks. I came especially for the flags. I have to go to my friend's apartment right away. It's on the street right off Colorado Boulevard. They're going to cordon off the street after 7 p.m. for tomorrow's parade." Yi Ling took from the alumna's hand a big bundle of flags and walked back to her car. The little green flags had their high school's name in Chinese on one side and in English on the other. The two pieces of triangular paper were stapled together and glued on a thin wood barbecue stick. Tomorrow morning's parade would have 3 million viewers along the parade route, plus 1 billion or so watching on television around the world. And it would be the first time in the Rose Parade's history that a Chinese band would be marching in it, and the only all-girls band at that. The band was her middle school's, chosen among hundreds of bands back home. The alumni of the whole of Southern California were fired up. Even Yi Ling, whose workload and schedule at this time of year would leave her little room for even breathing, had volunteered her service. But she had missed the fundraising ball, the welcoming ceremony at the airport, the dinner reception at the hotel. Now only the parade was left. She had told her parents and her sister why she couldn't spend the New Year's Eve with them. She had to go see the Rose Parade and cheer on her fellow schoolmates. Anna, her friend, had a son who was a teaching assistant at the California Institute of Technology. He had an apartment right off the parade route, and every year he went out of town to ski to avoid the crowd. He had agreed to let Yi Ling stay in his apartment on New Year's Eve. Yi Ling had called 2 of her schoolmates from the middle school, Xu Hua and Mei Juan. The 3 families would go as a cheerleading group. But Xu Hua's usually absent husband decided to come at the last minute from Taiwan, and the whole family of Mei Juan was recovering from the flu. They both pulled out at the last minute, so only Yi Ling and her daughter Xiao Hui could make it. Yi Ling put the bundle of flags on the back seat and took out one to give to Xiao Hui. She looked at her daughter's pink and yellow jacket and her silky black long hair with rainbow-colored pins in it. Xiao Hui was trying to read the Chinese characters on the little flag. She was Xiao Hui's age when she had first entered the most prestigious girls' school, the first girls' middle school in Taipei. She was the envy of everyone. Her hair had to be cut short to just reach the earlobe, a strict rule for the school. She went early in the morning to school, a heavy school bag with 2 meals, one for lunch and one for evening snack, astride her shoulder, and she didn't come home until dark. She even studied on New Year's vacation. Yi Ling fastened her seatbelt and turned on the headlights. She could see shadows moving back and forth behind the curtains. There would be a big New Year's potluck dinner at the house that night, and it would be just she and Xiao Hui eating their New Year's Eve dinner. She concentrated on her driving. As she drove near to the city of Pasadena, she could see festive decorations everywhere. The cars in front of her were slowing down. She eased her car onto Colorado Boulevard. On both sides there were Christmas lights and bells on each telephone pole. The curbs were full of chairs and sleeping bags stretched out like gigantic strips of quilt. The crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Her car was moving at a snail's pace. Suddenly a group of young men rushed in front of her car and started to squeeze a can of white rain onto her windshield. They were shouting and laughing. The nylon strings made an instant web blocking her view. She turned on the windshield wipers and wiped them away. Yi Ling turned and looked at Xiao Hui. They both laughed. It took a long time to reach the street where they wanted to go. There was already a policeman standing there allowing the cars only to go in but not to come out. The apartment was above a garage. There was a big tree close by, and the smell of lemon was in the air. They climbed the staircases, and Yi Ling turned the key. The door opened to a small room with an old sofa, bookshelves stuffed with books, a desk with a computer and other gadgets, and a small television. Next to the living room was the bedroom with a big mattress covering 2/3 of the floor. In the little kitchen at the back, there were only boxes of breakfast cereals on the table and a small microwave oven. The two of them carried the big Christmas dinner for 8, which they had just picked up from Kukuru, and then they came back for their sleeping bags. Yi Ling spread the sleeping bags on the mattress and lay down. She had gone to work as usual this morning. She had left early to pick up Xiao Hui, to get dinner, and to drive all the way to get the flags and then here. She closed her eyes. She saw in her mind's eye the track field of the middle school. The principal was giving a speech, and she told them that only those with academic excellence were selected to join the newly formed band. Her name was called. She stood in front of the crowd, a multitude of green blouses and black skirts behind her. She was proud and afraid. She didn't even know how to read music. Yi Ling woke up in a sweat. She went to the living room. Xiao Hui was curled on the sofa, reading Pride and Prejudice and munching on a bag of corn chips. Xiao Hui was only in the 7th grade, and she was already reading Jane Austen. Yi Ling hugged her daughter. "No more chips. We'll be eating dinner soon," she said. She took 2 portions from the turkey for 8 and took out stuffing and put them on 2 plates. She heated them up in the small microwave, 1 plate at a time. She put the paper plates, cups, and napkins down on the table. She and Xiao Hui sat down and ate their New Year's Eve dinner. There was supposed to be 8 of them, sort of a high school reunion dinner. It didn't matter. The important thing was the parade tomorrow. She and Xiao Hui would be the cheerleaders at this stretch of the route. Most of the other alumni would be at the beginning or at the end of the parade. This was a strategic point for cheering the band. The parade was the most important thing, just as examinations were the most important things when she was in the middle school. She had never failed examinations, not even once. After dinner, Yi Ling and Xiao Hui put on their sweaters, heavy jackets, wool scarves, hats, and heavy mittens. They went out. She carried a wool blanket, and Xiao Hui held all the flags. They walked toward Colorado Boulevard behind other people. The sidewalks were full of sleeping bags. They walked around and finally found a small empty space at the end of a row of chairs. A middle-aged man was sitting on one of the chairs. He told them that he and his family had been there since morning, and they had taken turns to keep their spot. Now his wife and kids had gone home to dinner. "You can have that place if you want," he said to Yi Ling. Yi Ling thanked him and told him that she and her daughter would never have come to spend the night on the street in order to watch the next day's parade. They came to cheer the band from her middle school. She showed him the bunch of green flags. The middle-aged man was excited. "I heard on the radio that your school band is the only all-girl band at this parade, and that their academic average is 3.8. "Yes." Yi Ling suddenly felt proud. She told him that she used to be in the school's band herself many, many years ago. "Not that many," he smiled and said. "You look young." "My son is studying at the University of Southern California," he said. "USC against Northwestern. We're going to the Rose Bowl right after the parade." It was almost 9 o'clock. The USC student came to relieve his father. Under the street light, Yi Ling saw that he had the same dark brown eyes as his father's. "Is this the first time you guys came to the parade?" he said. "Why don't you go and look around? There are a million people here tonight and it's safe. I'll watch your things for you." Yi Ling thanked him. She and Xiao Hui walked along Colorado Boulevard in the direction of the view stand. The smell of hot dogs and popcorn filled the dry night air. Some vans pulled up to the curb. Inside, people were watching ball games on portable televisions. Someone was sitting on a sleeping bag, playing an acoustic guitar and singing quietly. Yi Ling's hands started sweating in the heavy mittens. Vendors were pushing their carts in the middle of the street and selling tomorrow's parade program. She bought one and thumbed through it. The theme for the parade was childhood, happiness, and dreams. There would be 55 floats and 22 bands plus horses. She turned to the page where the band of her middle school was featured, the girls in white uniform with gold and silver trimming, and with their long white boots shining. Yi Ling remembered the uniform when she was in the band. It was not half as pretty. She started to walk in rhythm. She smiled at people who were walking in the opposite direction, their faces happy with anticipation. She took off her hat and scarf. Several police cars pulled up from nowhere, and armed policemen quickly came out. They immediately apprehended several youths and asked them to put their hands behind them. They started searching over their bodies. Yi Ling took Xiao Hui's elbow and they hurriedly turned back. "Back so soon?" the UC student asked. "Everything's fine?" "Fine," Yi Ling said. "Thank you." It was late. The noises around them quieted down. People had gotten into their sleeping bags. Yi Ling sat down in the blanket with her back against Xiao Hui's. She dozed off. "Why don't you go home and rest?" She woke up and found the student bending over her. He was talking to her softly. "I'll watch your things for you." "Is it too much trouble for you?" Yi Ling lifted her head. "That's all right. Leave your things here and just come back tomorrow." He straightened his back and his eyes twinkled. Yi Ling woke Xiao Hui up and they both stood up. It was just a couple of hours of sitting in the blanket, but her back was already stiff and sore. They went back to the apartment. Yi Ling slipped into her sleeping bag. She turned to Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui was already asleep in her bag. The mummy-shaped bag was light and warm, and the mattress was so much more comfortable than the cement sidewalk. In her college days, she had loved to go camping. Now the memories of those stargazing nights by the campfire had dissipated like smoke. She curled up in her bag, and she smelled Peng's lemon aftershave lotion. It was their honeymoon trip at the Grand Canyon. At the campground, she woke up in the middle of the night. Peng insisted that they go to a motel. She had not even dreamed that Peng hated camping. He had never said a word about it. Then he got up and drove away in the car. The headlights of the car quickly passed their little tent and disappeared in the darkness. She curled up in the double bag and cried in silence. She listened to the howling and screaming of the wind trapped in the canyon the whole night. He came back in the morning and apologized, but in the few years they were married, they never went camping again. Outside, the Santa Ana winds started blowing. She heard the sound of lemons dropping on the ground. The wind got stronger and stronger. Yi Ling thought of her blanket and the flags. They probably had blown away. The floats had also probably blown away. There might not even be a parade tomorrow. The years of effort to prepare for the parade by her middle school back home, all the numerous hours of practicing by the band members, and all the efforts of the alumnae here might just go down the drain. The dark and gray seashore had no one but her running along the furious waves. She wished that the waves would carry her away. She had given up her career, determined to stay home to raise Xiao Hui and to be a good wife to Peng, but he stopped coming home. She had fallen into a bottomless squall, and she was drowning. Only because of her parents' and her sister's help in taking care of Xiao Hui, Yi Ling was able to go out, find a job, and start all over again. They cheered and encouraged her on the side. Finally, she understood that life was not a school examination. Her effort alone, no matter how much she put in, was not enough. Only in accepting failure again could she stand up again, and she did stand up. It seemed that Yi Ling had just dozed off. She opened her eyes, and the sun was on the window panes. She woke Xiao Hui up quickly. Outside was a clear morning. Last night's Santa Ana wind had only left a few lemons and broken twigs on the ground. Colorado Boulevard had been swept clean. They found their spot. Her blanket had been folded neatly, and underneath it was the bundle of little green flags. The student from USC and his whole family were sitting on chairs, their faces bright with excitement. The little ones even said they would distribute the flags for Yi Ling, and when the band passed by, they would all cheer. 9 o'clock sharp. The LA policemen's motorcycles rode down the boulevard. Their black helmets and their motorcycles shone in the morning sun. Following them were little children wearing grass skirts and fresh leis around their necks, leading the band from Hawaii. Then riding down the boulevard were the mounted white horses from Long Beach. Following them was the first float, the Factory of Dreams, with thousands and hundreds of thousands of fresh carnations, mums, and roses fluttering and shining. The floats came, one prettier than the other. In between were the bands. Then following the float of the China Airlines Bird of Hope, stretched flower wings soaring toward the sky, Yi Ling saw the band of the First Girls Middle School of Taipei. Her band! They walked toward her. Their white uniforms in gold and silver gleamed in the golden sun. Their long, shining white boots marched in unison to the theme song of The Lion King. Yi Ling raised both her arms high in the air, waving the little green flags, tears rolling down her cheeks.